Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is Wednesday. It's your Wednesday show. I'm Brian Friedman from Benivo, and this is The View from the Top. And we have got an amazing show for you today. People are coming in from all the world. I see Ray Abbott is coming from Tippett Richardson. We've got Marie from, she's saying hello, everybody. We've got people coming in from all over the world. Viviana's coming in. If you're out there, let us know who you are, where you are. Please write in the comments box. Tell us who you are. Do join in the conversation. So today, a bit of a change of plan, and I just wanted to say a few words about it. Our show today was planned to be a case study talking with Microsoft, a two-part series talking about what they do in global mobility. Very sadly, one of our guests suffered a bereavement yesterday, and we took the decision, understandably, I'm sure you'll agree, to postpone the show. So we will be running the Microsoft shows, and they in fact will be in a couple of weeks' time, on the first episode on the 16th and the second on the 30th. But meanwhile, we pulled together what I think you're going to agree is a fantastic show. We're going to be talking about overcoming barriers to female global mobility. So what we're talking about here is not people working global mobility, but why there aren't more women making international assignments, making domestic assignments, going on transfers, and what we can all do to help encourage more women to go on transfer, and what's going wrong, and why, and indeed why is that important. So it's a really important subject, and it ties in, of course, very much with the Women Top 100 Global Mobility list that we've got running at the moment. More on that later. Of course, if you want to listen to us on audio, then we're also available on Spotify as well. So don't worry about if you want to listen to us as a podcast, we're out there on Spotify too. Many of you, of course, want your CPE codes, and I'm just going to leave them up here. So those are your CPE codes. So whether you want them from Worldwide ERC, your GMS or CRP codes, they're there. And many thanks to Mark Birchall and all our good friends at Worldwide ERC for that. Also, if you want your codes from HRCI or from SHRM, those codes are up there. And again, many thanks to our good friends at Rocket Mortgage for providing those codes. I'll leave that up there for a minute. If you want to sort of jot down the relevant code number or get your phone out and take a picture or whatever you want to do, we'll leave that up there for you. Now, next week, we've got another amazing show for you today. Next week, we've got a professor of global mobility. So we're looking at things with a bit of an academic angle next week, talking about what type of global mobility professional are you, which is really quite fascinating, because what he and his colleagues have put together is a test that you can take, and it actually does a bit of a character on who you are and allows you to think about yourself in terms of your personality as a global mobility professional. So, for example, as an individual, are you a bit of a harmonizer, or perhaps you're more of a innovator? Are you a sort of organizer, or are you someone who's much more a flexer? Are you someone who sustains your program, or are you someone that actually wants to break it up a bit and is a bit of a creator? Are you a person who likes a bit of balance in your life, or are you someone that wants to get out and network all the time? These are the sorts of dimensions. So we'll put it up at the end, but there is actually an online assessment you can do. It's completely free. We'll put it up on the end. And if you want to do the assessment during the next few days, then next week we're going to be talking all about the different types of personalities that we see in mobility, and we're going to be talking about some of the results. So I think you'll find this absolutely fascinating. So that's what we've got on the show next week. Meanwhile, what's been happening in the wonderful world of global mobility in the last 7 days? Let's have a look at the breaking news. So there you have it. Congratulations to everybody who has been promoted, everyone who's got a new job. And if you're looking, there are lots of jobs out there. And please do share those. If you've got jobs, you've got news, please do share it with us. Also, Shana Tova, a happy Jewish New Year to everybody who celebrates. And I'd like to wish everybody of every religion and none a very happy, healthy, and above all, peaceful New Year. So we're now going to move on, and I'd like to bring on, as ever, 𝐦𝐬𝐧𝐢 to give us an immigration update. So everybody, you know how it works. Please hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome to our stage 𝐦𝐬𝐧𝐢. Julia, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Good to see you. And where are you today?
I'm in Dubai at the moment. I'm going to Saudi Arabia tomorrow.
Right, as one does. The woman with the most stamped passport in the world. So tell us, where are we talking about today?
Well, we're a little bit behind because I wanted to talk about Latin America, because I was in Latin America about 2 weeks ago. And then because I also then went to the Labour Party conference, we decided to do last week about the Labour Party. But I wanted to kind of circle back on Latin America because so many things are happening there and there's so many challenges, but also fantastic opportunities. So I wanted to sort of give a bit of an update geopolitically and also what's happening from an immigration perspective. I wanted to say thank you so much to 𝐦𝐬𝐬, who is our partner, who I was in Mexico City with. She's actually from Costa Rica, but she's overall looking at the region, and also Miguel Jimenez, who helped give some of the information to this update. So basically, the whole region of Latin America, you know, there are quite a few geopolitical challenges at the moment. And one of the major challenges is the irregular migration, particularly towards the north. There's also quite a lot of organized crime and, you know, widespread poverty. The key migration crisis is from Venezuela, and I'm sure everybody is aware of that. And Venezuela continues to drive this mass migration. There's over 7 million Venezuelans who've been displaced. That's just an enormous number. And many of those Venezuelans are seeking asylum in the US. And obviously that's impacting US immigration policy as we get up towards the big election in the US in November. You know, it's affecting US immigration policy, and it's also affecting what's happening in the region. So because of this big migration from Venezuela, many of the other countries in Latin America are tightening up their policies, and they're doing it in response to this. So Mexico, for example, has revoked visa exemptions that were in place for people from Peru, and they've also introduced visas for people coming from Venezuela and Brazil. Now, at the same time that this is happening, this is kind of tightening up because of this big flow of people coming out of Venezuela. Some nations are implementing programs to attract skilled workers. And this is the whole pattern we're seeing throughout the whole world. We're seeing this pattern: concern about irregular migration, a sort of year of the elections, big hot topic, irregular migration, but at the same time, a real awareness of all countries in the world that they need to attract the right talent. So there's a lot of new digital nomad visas in LATAM to try and attract this talent. And then also you are seeing a digital transformation in LATAM, a real modernization of immigration processes. And again, that's particularly attracting, or they aim to attract foreign digital nomads and investments. But you're also seeing huge delays. And this is what I want to try and tell you is basically, when you think about LATAM and you think about what's happening geopolitically, you can then understand what's happening and why there are these delays. So at the moment, just calling out some of the kind of diplomatic issues, there is a big diplomatic issue going on and tension between Ecuador and Mexico. And that was because the Ecuadorian police raided the Mexican embassy in Quito because the former vice president, he was seeking asylum in Mexico. So he ran into the Mexican embassy in Quito, and the police in Ecuador raided that embassy and took him out. Now, because of that, there's been a suspension of consular services between Ecuador and Mexico. And, you know, tensions are there still between the two countries. And Mexico has reintroduced visas for people coming from Ecuador. And the Venezuelan government as well, they're very tense, and they've ordered the return of all diplomatic personnel from countries like Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica. So the big thing for global mobility is these tensions, and I've obviously just touched on a couple, these really affect processing times at consular posts, because you can imagine if there's no diplomatic relation, that will affect consular times. It's delaying visa times and travel authorization. So what's the tip? The tip is that if you're moving someone to LATAM, then you really should start early, think early, allow for all these delays. And also, if you're having visitors that are going in and out, you know, make sure that they are prepared for questions, that they have their onward ticket, that they have their accommodation. And also, the whole relationship between the US and LATAM is complicated because, you know, we've seen this shift to left-wing governments, and that's right across the region, Brazil, Colombia, Chile. And also because, you know, US is very focused on irregular migration. And this, we can say that this is because, you know, it's heightened because of the US election. So that's the kind of challenges that we have. But on the positive side, you know, Latin America has so much to offer. And I have to tell you that I had the most wonderful time in Mexico City, and I would absolutely urge anyone to visit Mexico City. In fact, I feel like a bit of a tourist advertisement, because I've actually persuaded one of my daughters to go on holiday there in November, because there's so much to see. There's so culturally, so exciting. And I really took every advantage to explore Mexico City. Went to lots of really amazing places, museums, the pre-Aztec pyramids, the canals. I did all this between racing and between meetings. I really felt like I had a really good experience of what there is to see, and it really is amazing. The other thing to say is that, you know, LATAM has a lot of really important strategic commodities. So the region actually has more than half the global lithium reserves, more than half, and 40% of the copper in the world comes from LATAM. So you can really see, and when you actually look at the supply chains, because at the moment, geopolitically, we're having a lot of problems with supply chains. You know, we have this massive problem with the Houthi rebels and the Red Sea. We've had problems in Hamburg with the strikes, but we're having massive problems with supply chains. But when you follow through the supply chains, many of these components, they're actually coming from LATAM because of all the fantastic reserves they have. And also Mexico, it was the top US trading partner in 2023, and that's because of nearshoring, because the US have this policy of actually putting in manufacturing sites in in Mexico, because that's near, and moving them away from places like China. So foreign direct investment was up in Mexico by 40% last year. And also, if you look at the world's top performing emerging market currencies, they include Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico. The other thing is that the US State Department, and this is just one example of an amazing project, they've actually partnered with the government of Costa Rica, and they're exploring the opportunities to diversify and grow the global semiconductor ecosystem. So, I mean, that's really incredible. The US government want to create a more secure and sustainable semiconductor value chain, and they're partnering with Costa Rica. And no surprise, tourism is up across the region 12% this year. So anyway, I was really hoping that Leo and Michael would be very pleased with my presentation in Mexico City, because I'm hoping to be invited back to other countries in LATAM next year. So I've been telling my boss, yeah, please send me there. That was really nice.
Thank you so much. And I think probably the Mexico City Tourist Department has just hired you for the and we always say, I think Tara Hagan's already said great tip on Mexico City, heard great things about this. So we've got one convert.
There we are, Tara. Yeah, Tara can come with me on my next trip.
Exactly. So we're going to move on now, because we've got so much to talk about on the show. And we're going to move on, and we're going to be talking about our top 100 list next. As just to remind everybody, we are launching, or we have launched now, and you can nominate people for the top 100 women in global mobility. So let's move on. We're going to say goodbye to Julia and welcome to the stage Beth Nelson as we talk about the top 100 list. So everybody, please hit the heart button, hit the like button, and please hit the applause button as we say goodbye for the moment to Julia and welcome to our stage Beth Nelson. Hey Beth, how's it going?
I am well, thank you. I love these videos. They just get everyone so enthusiastic.
Oh, we're going to have a bit of music. So tell us, how's it going? And tell us about the top 100 list for this year.
Well, yeah, I've got a few updates today, but I do want to start with the top 100 list. It has been a huge success so far. We are loving all of the nominations, all of the different people who are nominating. Please keep those nominations coming in. The more votes someone gets, the more likely it is that they're going to make it to the list. So please put people in there. If you haven't been nominated yet,
I just
get your friends to do it.
Great tip. Just because you've been nominated doesn't mean you're going to make the list. What you want is as many nominations as possible, because the list will be the people who get the most nominations. So if you want to be on the list, make sure that people are nominating you. And if there's people you want to see on the list, please do make sure they get nominated.
Everyone can make up to 10 nominations, and you can submit as many times as you want. So 10 nominations at once. You don't have to give a reason, but we'd love it if you could, because it's great to hear the reasons that these amazing female leaders are being nominated.
And you can nominate either anonymously or you can nominate not anonymously. Yeah. So Beth, what else are you going to talk to us about today?
Well, I just wanted to highlight 3 opportunities that are coming up in the next month or so to meet members of the Benivo team. So firstly, my fantastic US colleagues and Nitzan, our CEO, will be over at the ERC event on the 22nd of October in Washington, DC. Cara is presenting with the amazing Pradeep Settler, who you would have seen on the show just a few weeks ago. It's going to be another fantastic session. So if you get the chance to go along to that, please do. There's also the opportunity to meet with us, book book meetings with us, and also there's a breakfast going on as well if you want to get involved. So if you want to do anything to do with that, just let me know or get in touch with Cara. In the UK, you get to see Brian and I together live at FEM. So we'll be there on the 29th and 30th of October. Yeah. On the 29th, we're also hosting a meal just for corporates. If you fancy coming along, just drop me a line, and we'd love to host you. And then, of course, we'll be presenting at the event as well with the amazing David Carmichael from CGI, and being at the awards evening as well, where hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to win some awards. So looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Cool. Okay, so thank you so much, Beth, for that update. We're going to now move on, and we've got our change maker, who's the wonderful Desiree Nelson from Warner Brothers Discovery. So this is a fantastic company and a fantastic change maker who is with us. So everybody, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. We're going to say goodbye to Beth, although she's going to be joining us shortly again, and welcome to our stage, Desiree Nelson. Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Brian? Thank you so much for having me.
I am super excited for today's show. So, Desiree, first of all, whereabouts are you?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia.
Lovely. I should got a shout out there from Kristen, a previous guest on this show. Shout
Yay,
out.
thank you, Kristen.
Yay, Desiree, she says. So, Desiree, for the people who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into this game? How did you get into mobility?
That's a great question. I stumbled upon it. I happened to be working for PwC when Turner was my client many years ago. And this opportunity to work with the global mobility team opened up. And I connected with such a great team. I had Andrew Jackson, who is my mentor and colleague, and Nancy Blackamore, so many people that welcomed me, and it was just a great fit. And I'm so grateful that I was able to be a part of this space. And here I am 10 years later. So I love it. I'm learning a lot too.
Cool, that's great. And so you work with Warner Brother Discovery, and I think everyone's heard of Warner Brothers, and everyone's heard of Discovery, but one of the things that people may not know is that you've got lots of other brands as well. So tell us about the company and the different brands that Warner Brothers Discovery has.
Yeah, so most people don't know that HBO Max, Cinemax, and CNN, our news channel, that's what we definitely are known for, CNN International. So many of our correspondents, that's who we work with directly, and the CEOs, to be able to move them when they relocate to different locations. So there are many brands underneath Warner Brothers Discovery. There are probably more than you think that there are, but there are several.
Yeah, no, I had a quick look at your website, and I could see, and I was quite surprised at the different brands. I had no idea. I'll be honest, I had no idea that CNN was part of Warner Brothers Discovery, or HBO was. So I mean, it certainly completed my education. So tell us about the sort of people you meet. I'm guessing you've got cameramen, and you've got film crews and correspondents. I mean, tell me, what sort of people are you moving nationally and internationally?
Well, that's exactly it, Brian. We have correspondents who go wherever the news is going. So we support them and their crews. So the journalists, the camera crews, the people that make all the magic happen. So we make sure they have all of the provisions that they need to go on assignment where the news happens.
So I'm guessing that sometimes, what Bindu said, that's the first, I've got a quote up there, first person I'm meeting from Warner Brothers. Hey! I mean, sometimes I'm guessing your international travelers, whether assignees or business trips, are going with the crowd, and sometimes they're going against the crowd. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Presumably something like, say, the Olympics happens, and the world is descending on Paris, or next time around Los Angeles, or wherever it might be. The world is descending on there, and you're going with the world into that very, very busy location. But equally, there'll be other times when maybe there's been a conflict or a natural disaster, and you're going into a location at the same time as everybody else is trying to get out. So you're going against the flow.
Absolutely, Brian. And I am astonished at the level of loyalty, the level of professionalism that our correspondents really, in many ways, risk their lives to be in spaces so that they can share what is going on in war-torn countries, whether it's a hurricane, whether, in all the places where we don't necessarily want to be, but we know we need to know what's going on there. And I totally applaud them because they are fully committed and they do an outstanding job.
So every time we turn on CNN and watch the news, we should be thinking to ourselves, that correspondent out there is someone that Desiree or your team was involved in actually getting out there one way or another, and sorting out their visa and their accommodation and their flights and what have you.
Yes, their temporary housing, all of those things. And it's very important to us because the duty of care, we want to make sure that they are well cared for, that there's one less thing that they have to manage when they are there to do the work of a correspondent. And it's really amazing. Every time I think about all the things that are involved, it's a lot, but they are amazing.
And roughly speaking, how many trips do you manage a year?
So we manage between 250 and 300, and that's domestic and international trips.
Cool. So it's a chunky number. So
Yeah.
we're going to get on to talk about women travelers and women assignees in a moment. Before we do, I just want to just find out you as a change maker. I mean, you're here as one of our change makers. What was it that made you want to be a change maker? What do you get out of being a change maker?
Well, Brian, I was invited to a Changemakers event by Mary Weaver, who I've had the pleasure of being able to work with on the Mark Outreach Board. And I didn't know this existed, but she told me that Changemakers focus on the technology piece and solutions, a community that we can come together, because as mobility professionals, we all have things that we wish were maybe automated or help us to make decisions more quickly, like the estimation tools and the things that we need access to. So, and then she told me about the charity piece of it. And I was like, oh, that's a win-win all the way around. The fact that I was able to just choose a organization that was important to me.
Tell us a bit about that charity, and then we'll move on to talk about the women travelers. But tell us a bit about the charity.
So my charity of choice is the Flint River Community Center Boys and Girls Club. And I chose that because it's the first in the Riverdale community that is not too far from me. And it's been in existence for maybe a couple years. And as a parent of my husband and I with two sons, we have teenage sons. There were not a lot of options close by for after school care, for summer camp, all the things that you need, the kind of supports that you need um, for a family. And so I was very excited to be able to support them financially. So that's why I chose that. And there are several, I don't know if you know, Brian, there are several people, definitely celebrities, that have benefited from being a part of their local Boys and Girls Club. I'm an avid Bronco fan. Terrell Davis, who's a Bronco that led us to NFL championships. He had the Boys and Girls Club. There's Ruth E. Carter. She's a designer and she's won several Oscars. And she also really felt like that was a part, like a second home to her. And also Denzel Washington. So most people know those names, and there are so many more. But to me, I feel like to be able to champion a place that supports children to be successful, to be leaders, that was everything for me. So it really sealed the deal on both sides.
Okay, we'll move on. I think actually we were chatting earlier. You mentioned J-Lo as well. I think Jennifer
That's
Lopez.
right.
Yeah,
Jennifer Lopez. I mean, there's a super long list.
that's amazing.
You
So
would be amazed.
that is amazing, and we're so grateful to have you as a change maker. If anybody else wants to be a change maker, then do get in contact with us. We're going to move on now because we're going to be talking about female leaders and the role of global mobility in promoting female leadership. It's a really, really important subject. Desiree is actually going to stay with us to talk about this, but we're going to be bringing Beth onto stage to join us in this really, really important conversation. So everybody, as we say, well, we're not saying goodbye to Desiree, we're moving on to the new conversation, but we're welcoming Beth back to the stage. Please hit the heart button, hit the like button, and of course, please hit the applause button. Hey, okay.
Hello again.
Let's get into this, okay? Because we're talking about the importance of women in global mobility leadership and how we overcome those barriers. But I suppose the first thing is this. I mean, it sounds a bit blindingly obvious, but the importance of female leadership. But one of the things that prompted this discussion, I know, was a discussion that you had, Beth, with another company. I'm not sure it's confidential, but we won't say who anyway. But another company who was talking about their focus on female leadership. We're not talking here about mobility. We're talking about female leadership overall. So tell us a bit about that conversation and what that company was saying.
I've got to say, Brian, one of the favorite parts of my job is that I get to speak with my change makers on a regular basis. So any change makers that I've onboarded to the change maker group, I get to chat with them. And one of those conversations this week was about the fact that their company had a target for the number of female leaders that they wanted to achieve by 2030. And because mobility is such an important part of a leadership criteria, they wanted to make sure that global mobility was a huge part of this track to get this goal. So can I just a certain number of mobility?
Before we get onto that, can we just say what was the target they set? Tell us a bit about. I know they set a target. They set a target. What was a certain percentage of top leadership should be female?
Exactly. So it was in the 40s. They wanted to go over 40% of their leaders to be female by 2030. And that is a very aggressive target, but they wanted to go behind this, and they're actually going to find themselves if they don't reach that target. So it's something that
this company's going to fine itself. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but this company was going to fine itself if they didn't hit this target. So presumably that then put pressure within the organization to say, what can we do to encourage more women into leadership positions?
Exactly. And I love this. I love this because it's making sure that it's on the top of everyone's criteria. I mean, we have OKRs at Benivo. I'm sure that everyone has their own way of setting metrics. But the fact that the company have decided to do this means it's part of everybody's metrics. And that's why, this conversation happened, because it was reaching out and saying, well, what's everyone else doing? Which is, as we know, one of Benivo's specialties of sharing that kind of information.
Okay, that's absolutely fascinating. And Desiree, from your point of view, from Warner Brothers Discovery, I mean, is female leadership something that's on the agenda?
Absolutely, Brian. And I can say sincerely, since I've been there, that is a focus and a point of Warner Brothers Discovery. And I think they understand the value of what women bring to the table. And they also see what the C-suite looks like and the challenges. So it is being addressed. And I think too, it takes the collective, all of us, to really partner and across the board, with even leveraging skill sets that are equally as important, that could be used in different arenas, to consider opportunities for women across the board. So it is important.
I think one of the statistics that I've seen, Desiree, is on average between 30 and 50% of those on the C-suite have had global mobility experience. So it's something that's not just a nice to have, but nearly a mandatory requirement if we want to get people onto that C-suite level.
Yes, and I completely agree.
Okay, that's a huge point. So we're saying up to 50% of CEOs have had global mobility experience. And that's why it's important that we in mobility focus in on female mobility, because in many cases that you don't get to the top if you haven't been on an international trip. It'd be interesting to ask the audience, to how extent that, how important, how relevant that is in their organizations to get to the top. Do you have to have been, or is it, if you like, a tick in the right box if you've actually been on an overseas assignment? So I'd love to know what the audience are saying about that. So tell us a bit more, Beth. I mean, why is mobility so important?
Well, I think mobility is important for the ability to know your entire company. So it's not just about knowing the headquarters or knowing your local office. If you want to be in a position of leadership, you need to know how the entire organization works, and actually prove that you can see some of the culture. One of the reasons that a lot of headquarters or companies send people out from headquarters is to seed culture, or bring people in is so that they can go back and seed that culture into all the smaller offices around the world. So it's really important to prove as a leader that you can do that. So global mobility, as well as obviously the cultural awareness, the strategic thinking that comes with it, it's showing that you can lead in that role. And I think that's why it's one of those experiences that is most treasured and valued in the leaders that get promoted.
Okay, so let's move the conversation on, because I think we can all agree that female leadership is a good thing that our organizations are all striving for. And I think we can also all agree that to do that, it would be good for global mobility to encourage as many women as is possible and practical to do those trips. So if you like, that's the aim is clear. But what about the barriers? I mean, what do you think are the biggest barriers to women in terms of global mobility?
Well, I definitely think that as a woman, when you take on the responsibilities of your own household, I think as nurturers, as just all the things that come with that, your families. I know for me as a mom, the first thing I think about are, I want to make sure they're in great schools, even the doctors. My sons have been with the same pediatrician since birth. I have to know and be sure of all the things that move with me are going to be cared for, prioritized, even during this disruption, because it'll be a great new experience. That's the beauty of being able to have a global mobility, or a mobility assignment. But there are also things that come with it that are more challenging. So, and I think it can, if we have the right preparation, if companies are really doing the leg work and the heavy lifting on the what is it that you need before an assignment is done, based on even our duty of care, we care about our assignees, and we want to make sure we're going to make sure if they have a family of 4, we're going to meet that family of 4 need. It's the same way for women of mobility as well, or someone that's going on an assignment. So I think some of those things have to be considered in the front end. Families, care, healthcare, schools, even if they care for an elderly spouse, or I'm sorry, elderly parents. That's what I'm trying to say. And then the spouse, where are they going to work when you go on this new assignment? So there are so many things to be considered. And if given the right tools and resources to support them, I think it can be valuable and it can be rewarding.
I really agree with you there, Desiree. The key thing there, I think, is a lot of those apply to a man as well. So we're talking about female leaders here. So what is different? What I would like to sort of pull out of this, and please get involved in the comments, is what's different about being a woman as a leader to do this. And one of the biggest differences.
Sorry to come across you, but we did say we'd do a quick poll of the audience. And I just wanted to do that, which is, what do you think is the biggest barrier to women in global mobility? And I'll give you 3 choices: a reluctant partner, lack of organizational support, caregiving responsibility. Actually, I'll give you a 4th choice: other. So in the comments box, let us know what you think is the biggest barrier that women have to overcome to go on assignment. Yeah. Okay. So Beth, anyway, I wanted to give the talking stick back to you at that point.
Yeah, no, I think they're all really good buckets to put in, and some of them do apply more to women than others. Like, as we know, over 60% of caregiving responsibilities for an older relative fall on women. I mean, the surveys out there that show it is biased towards the woman to do that. I had one of my colleagues say something that stuck with me yesterday, which was a girl is for life and a boy takes a wife. Just indicating that if you have a daughter, she's more likely to look after you. And I know that's certainly true in my family. So I'm not saying this is for everyone, but again, it's those cultural norms. And if those cultural norms are out there, it's more likely that they're in the caregiver role. And the women that we're talking about here, just sort of like honing in on the demographic, these are women of a certain age. So they're women who've got all of the experience of in their company. They're ready to go on a leadership track, which means that they're probably not early in their career. They're likely to have a partner, which means that those partners' skills and responsibilities come in. And if you are a woman on a leadership track, you're more likely to have a partner who's also on some kind of a good job and on a career path themselves. And that brings in all of these additional challenges, which I'm not saying don't exist the other way, and probably, and I hope, is going to become more of the norm. But certainly I think there is historically and more culturally that not been the case for the woman to have an equal dual career, which I suppose is what we're highlighting here. Sorry, bro.
Let me come in. I mean, we're getting lots of comments in from what people are saying. I mean, what the survey said, when we ran this survey on LinkedIn earlier, and I mean, all of these were issues, but by far the largest was caregiving responsibilities. 75% of the people, which is a massive amount, said that the biggest single barrier to women in global mobility was responsibility for caregiving. And I think a lot of that was actually elder care. So Desiree, I mean, have you had experience of people who wanted to go on assignment or trips but had maybe elderly parents? And was there anything you do? I mean, have you ever sort of moved somebody with their parent?
That's a great question. I have been presented with that, as far as the assignee wanted to go, but they wanted to bring their mother as well. And the reasoning was because she had children to care for. She had 2. And so it was very important to consider that. We definitely suggested that the business approve it, because that's not necessarily one of our policies that we typically do. So even it would have been an exception, but she needed that type of a support. And it was either she was going to have that or she wasn't going to be able to go on this assignment. And those are the type of things that come up all the time, that we have to be able to get in front of those things. And I see Kristen's point too. It's like the opportunities, who gets tapped on the shoulder. I think sometimes women are reconsidered because of all of the things that they might have on their plate, or we should have these opportunities. But I would hope that they would be just considered in a way that we can meet all of the expectations and take care of them if we do that prior to the assignment and make the right provisions for them in order for that to work.
Yeah, I mean, Kristen raised that point, and in fact, Stephanie Dedekind made a similar point earlier today on LinkedIn. She said, "Are enough women offered the opportunity of an international assignment in the first place? So, is there a level of I don't know what you want to call it, self-selection by the organisation, saying, oh, well, we won't ask her because we know that she's got children or elderly parents, and some way they're sort of, you know, people are being self-selected out, and that in turn means that they don't subsequently get to a senior leadership place in the organisation because they haven't had the international experience." Is that something that is very real that we're seeing?
I would say yes. I think it is. And you know, Brian, as I was even trying to research and look into this, I think the bandwidth of the global mobility team is such that in many ways we haven't had enough time to drill down on why are these things still happening. I mean, we know they exist, but we haven't had we need to focus on them more. Maybe I should say that, because they are very important. They're equally important. And I think it could only benefit us if we get more women that are able to be in a situation where they can do a mobility assignment, because the experience and even working with other professionals who have gone through that, you need that type of experience in a leadership role, and I think it could only benefit them.
Okay. Now, we have sitting backstage a woman who has probably been on more business trips than anybody I've ever met in my life, and who is very much in a leadership position, and indeed who's got 4 daughters. So I think it's a shame to keep Julia in an immigration box. Let's bring Julia back out of the immigration box. And what I want to do is to talk about what the solutions might be. And actually, I'll start with you, Beth, is that, you know, we've got this issue that we know that there are barriers. What is it that you can see companies have done? And then maybe, Julia, we can talk a bit about your own personal experiences too. But give us a bit of background, Beth, in terms of how we overcome some of these barriers.
So, especially since COVID, there's been a huge push in virtual assignments. So virtual assignments were originally being seen as a bit of a solution for helping women to go on assignments. They come with pros and cons, but as a solution, it is a flexible work arrangement. It is a possible solution to meet that need. One other one that is very common in policies is spousal assistance programs. So what can we do to help that partner, to help that spouse actually get a job? So job search, networking, setting up their own business, maybe taking this as an opportunity to train. Commuter assignments are hugely popular. So just breaking up the family and only the leader doing the commuter for maybe a year or 2 years, probably not a permanent solution, but that's really popular. And then one that I particularly love is, and actually I was speaking to another change maker this morning who's made this work, is employing the partner. So finding a reason that the partner can actually be employed by the company. So that's a big, quick run through of the top 4 or 5 that I think I've seen companies have, but it has to work for the company and the individual.
And tell us about you, Julia. Actually, Bindu said, I said you got the 4 daughters. She goes, and is a lovely grandmother too. So we're ticking all our boxes here in terms of the problems that people need to overcome, and indeed you have overcome. So tell us a bit about it. So earlier in your career, when your children were younger, you presumably still travelled in those days. So I mean, tell us about some of the challenges that you were facing and how you managed to overcome them at the various, stages of your career.
Yeah, I think I've always been very lucky to work for organisations that were very understanding, very understanding about the position. I remember really early on I was made a partner of a law firm, and I literally had only been there 5 minutes, and then I found out I was expecting another baby, and it does look a bit odd, if, well, not odd, but to have 4 is a bit excessive at some points, but
We
they were
won't have
so nice.
that.
Yeah, they were so nice, and they said, they were really kind, and they said something like, well, we haven't employed you, we haven't employed you just for the next, couple of years. We hope that you'll stay with us for a long time, and therefore, sort of don't worry, that'll be fine. I mean, I literally had only been there about 6 weeks. And also, I remember as well, when I had my first baby, I was very frightened to travel with her. And I remember another person saying to me, just don't be frightened. What's the problem with it? Just get on a plane. And at the time I was doing lots of work in Hong Kong. And so, then I just put her in a carry cot and took her, and then it didn't seem such a big thing in my mind. It actually seemed fine, and air hostesses are so sweet on the plane because they don't like babies crying, so everyone will give you a bit of a hand, and people were so sweet. I must tell you, this is a very funny story. We probably shouldn't be telling very funny stories, but I heard this really funny true story the other day from someone whose daughter is an air hostess, and they said this very famous actor got on the plane, and he was sitting in first class, and he got on with this very there was a few people behind him. There was a nice lady with a little baby, and then she was sitting really close to him, and the air hostess was saying, oh my goodness, this baby's going to cry. And actually the baby was quite good, and the whole long flight passed, and the air hostess was very pleased that the baby hadn't made such a sound. And then she said to this very famous actor, oh, that lady over there, she did very well managing that baby all the flight. And he said, oh yes, that's my wife. But I thought that was
Oh my
that
goodness.
was quite funny. Yeah, so
Wow.
he hadn't helped her at all. But maybe, maybe people but maybe people, air hostesses are very sweet. And then I do remember when I went to Hong Kong for a longer period, my husband was able to get a sabbatical from his job. He's a pediatric neurologist, and he got a sabbatical, and the firm were very good about finding accommodation, and they also flew us out, in a very nice way. So I think having a really supportive employer, and perhaps looking at things outside of policy, if you've got someone with very little children, just being a bit more imaginative about the sorts of things that you can do. And I know, for example, at the stage I was at then, when the babies were very tiny, I wasn't entitled really to, a flat when I say was in a place for a long time, but I always was given one because of the babies. So, I think, and then that makes you feel very loyal to your company. And Fragaman are really amazing. I mean, we're incredibly diverse and have so many women partners, and so they're incredibly, good about all the things of diversity. And I think being exceptional with your policies is good.
That's helpful.
I think that's sorry.
Can I just ask about a different category? I just want to move the conversation on, because we've talked about the barriers that women have to overcome and how companies can help, but there is a subset which I think is even more difficult and even more barriers. And what I'm talking here about single mothers, because we're sort of assuming there's spousal assistance and what we're going to do with the other half, but let's assume there isn't another half. So we've got a single mother. What can companies do to help single mothers and find they don't get a detriment in their career because they want to move them, but there is no partner? I mean, Desiree or
Yes.
Beth, have experience of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Brian. And I think you need even more of the right pre-assignment planning supports to be able to support them. I'm even trying to think of, I don't know that I've had a direct contact with a single mom that has gone.
That probably speaks volumes. So maybe the single mums are
I
ruling.
know, and so it does speak volumes because we do want them to have that opportunity. It should not be, they shouldn't be disqualified from that, even though they have the skill sets to be able to do that. They just need the right supports for their children as well. So, yeah, but that's an excellent question, and I think it needs to be addressed, and we should look into it.
I think the only way we're going to start addressing these things is if we start keeping data. And we need to track who is going on assignment, what's worked, what has worked in other companies. So I've mentioned things such as the commuter assignments, the spousal assistance, employing somebody, or maybe even just flexible work arrangements, that virtual arrangement. But what's actually worked at different companies? Why has it worked? Is there a different demographic, different profile that it's worked for? This is not something that we really need to shy away from. And it's something that I'd love this community to come together, because I think nobody's got the great silver bullet or the golden bullet, but maybe they have. And it's something that it would be great to get out there. The Permits Foundation is doing such amazing work to make it possible for partners to work. But how do we get them to accept in the first place? How do we incentivize them to move?
But this is something that we can easily, certainly from Benivo perspective, put into our dashboards to measure the demographics. I mean, the data's there. We just need to find a way of pulling it out and then working out what we can do. Because there clearly is, a big issue here that we all need as an industry to address. And almost going around to the beginning of the conversation, I mean, that particular company that we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation had set itself a target of having 40-something%, between 40 and 50% women leadership. They're not going to get there. And that is the challenge that their mobility team is facing. They're not going to get there unless they do something. So we've only got literally a minute or so left, but I don't know if somebody wants to have a, Beth, maybe you want to put in a word, or
could I just say, I just wanted to say that I'm flying to Saudi Arabia tomorrow, and the minister of women, who's a lady minister, she's really amazing, and she's got this huge project to work with companies to open up nurseries, because there aren't enough facilities for younger babies, before they go to school. And she's worked with a number of big companies who've opened these fantastic nurseries. And I think that's something that, they're trying to really change the culture in Saudi, so that Saudi women, particularly can go to work, because they will have a nursery at the employer's site. And I think this is a very good idea. And I was talking to another client yesterday who's actually, they're starting a data center, and they've actually building it in an area in Saudi Arabia where there is a lot of women, but they're building it to take it to the women, so that they, the women will have a very easy commute, and they feel that this is a really great way to have a sustainable workforce. So I think these are really good ideas that people are thinking right out the box. We do have a shortage of nurseries in the UK, and there does seem to be a shortage globally. So employers doing more is really exciting, I think.
Okay, we're sadly coming towards the end of our hour. I'm going to bring Tally back, our wonderful producer, back onto the stage. And I also wanted just to mention that next week's show is all about what sort of global mobility professional you are. And we've posted the link to the survey. That survey is now live if you want to go in. So it's not a survey, it's a personalized report. So go onto that link, everybody. Trust me, I've done it. It is amazing. Go into that link. It'll ask you a series of questions. It takes about 10 minutes to do. And it will tell you at the end what sort of global mobility professional you are. Are you, I can't remember all the categories now, but are you an innovator? Are you a harmonizer? Are you a creator? Are you a flexor? Are you a balancer? Are you a sustainer? Are you a creator? It's a fantastic psychological survey, and do it. And we're going to be discussing the results next week. And indeed, if you want to sort of then get involved in the show and talk about your own results, we'll be very, very happy to get you in to talk about it. So,
Brian, just before we leave, you said that we should get that on a dashboard. So you haven't visited the platform for quite a while, I guess, because we do have a report. It's called Inclusion. And it's right there. It's right there. So yes, that's the first thing that you need to do. Get the data and
Yeah.
it's right there. So
And the data's there, and then we need to use it. So yeah, for those of you who have Benivo clients, you'll know that. For those of you who aren't Benivo clients, well, why not? So anyway, we're going to move on. It's been a fascinating.
Shana Tova, everyone.
And Happy New Year, Shana Tova to those who celebrate, and we'll see you all again this time next week. Have a great week, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.